remember this time last year when you did these, you kind of maybe did an audit on what you think you guys did and didn't do. You were talking about like pace and various things. I'm just curious, as you relook at the season as a whole or how you were eliminated, how do you look at like, I guess, how it went bad from just like a schematic standpoint?
How it went bad?
Or just, I like things you want to do better,
Yeah, well, first of all, pretty good run, we're 500 at midseason, floundering, clearly weren't going anywhere. And then Mike makes the trade for Jimmy, and our fortunes changed entirely. That's how good Jimmy is. And from that point on, we had the number one ranked defense in the league. We were 8th on offense. I would say when we started the season in Hawaii in training camp, the big focus offensively was shooting a lot of threes. And I believe we finished in the top 3 or 4 in the league in three-point attempts. And that's with multiple versions of our team, before the trade, after the trade, everything in between. So I think we accomplished a lot of what we wanted from the beginning of the year in terms of how we played. I think the defense really picked up after we got Jimmy for obvious reasons. We get to the conference semis and win game 1. I think we put ourselves in a great spot, and obviously, Steph's injury changed things, and Minnesota was great. But all in all, I mean, are there things we can do better? Absolutely. But this was a season where we accomplished a lot. A lot of good things happened, and it's important to celebrate that.
When you talk about the way you played offensively, do you think the offensive style, system, whatever you want to call it, was the best, way to maximize the personnel on the roster this year?
Well, here's what I know. We have Steph Curry on our team, who is one of the greatest players of all time. He's also maybe the most unique superstar of all time. What makes him special is his on and off ball prowess. And so the best way to maximize Steph is to put him in pick and roll and then to have him fly off screens. And I think that's been proven, over the last decade, how powerful that can be. And he's our son. This is a solar system. He's our son, and you're not going to duplicate Steph anytime soon. And so, any talk of do we need to change our offensive system, to me is kind of laughable. Like, what does that mean? So let's not run Steph off screens. Let's not put Steph in pick and roll. I'm not even sure how to respond to that, honestly. It's like what we've done has been incredibly powerful. Steph is, again, one of the all-time greatest players, playing at the peak of his power still, I think, or very close to it. We're going to keep doing what we're doing. And anything else would be a disservice to our team.
When you look at the growth that Moses and Brandon had this year, when you kind of reflect on their development, what did you think about how they, changed from the beginning of the year to the end of the year?
Moses and
Brandon.
And Brandon. I thought both had really good years. I thought the picture became much clearer for Moses after the trade. I thought the last couple of years there was a clear overlap with Wiggs, J.K., Moses. And, the trade sort of solidified Moses' spot as on-ball defender, three-point shooter, playing off of other guys. And I thought for the first time in his, 3.5, 4 years here, everything became simpler and was clarified, and he did a great job within that. Brandon, it's been well documented, the early season struggles. The trade for Jimmy also clarified everything for him. He became the secondary ball handler where he's at his best, connected the game. Anytime you put high IQ guys together on the floor, which we did with, Draymond, Jimmy, Steph, BP. I mean, you can see the results. And Brandon had a huge role in our late season run, and we're excited about both guys. I mean, really, really good young players who are getting better all the time.
Steve, Steph and Draymond spoke to this a little bit yesterday, that getting Jimmy was the big move, and maybe in the past you guys have been looking for the big move. Do you feel exactly the same way, that this offseason doesn't need to be – I mean, you're always going to try to get the best players possible, I know, and you're not the general manager, but do you feel a little different going in offseason than you have for the last previous?
Oh, yeah. Last two seasons, I mean, we didn't even make the playoffs last year, So the whole focus, this year was getting back to the playoffs. We were heading for another 11th place, 10th place finish, mid-season. So Jimmy Butler's one of the best players in the NBA. You put him, next to Steph, next to Draymond. You saw the results. Whatever the record, 23-8, 24-8, something like that.
23-8, then the play-in was 24-8,
yeah. All the data supports that, the offensive rating, the defensive rating, the impact on other players, what Brandon and Moses did, QP, after we got Jimmy. The game just made sense again when we got Jimmy. So, he comes back next year. We got Steph healthy. We feel like we can pick up where we left off, but we definitely have to make some improvement, both internally, just with the way we're doing things as a staff, and also roster-wise. Can we find a little more balance? I'm really excited about next year.
Kuminga's future will be kind of the big ticket item of y'all summer. I know that's kind of a Mike decision and process, but if he were to come back, do you feel like it can work in a way maybe better than it has even?
Yeah. I mean, if JK comes back, we will for sure spend the early part of the season playing him with Jimmy, Draymond, Steph. I mean, to me, that would be a no-brainer. We didn't have that luxury this year. We're fighting. We've basically been in the playoffs since the minute we got Jimmy, and that was also when JK got hurt. So we spent, whatever it was, 25 games or so without JK, and went on that run. We found a formula that worked. When he did come back, it was a tough fit, but we also didn't have the luxury of just experimenting and giving that more of a runway. So if JK comes back next year, we have to look at that for sure.
What do you think about just his development?
JK? I thought he had a really good year. I thought he was really coming into his own before he got hurt. The injury really hurt him. When he came back from the injury, he was not in rhythm. He was not the same player he was when he got hurt, and so that put kind of a little bit of a obstacle in our way as we're trying to get to the playoffs and advance in the playoffs. It felt square peg round hole for us, and so we obviously went away from JK as part of the rotation, and then he handled it really well. For him to stay ready, stay positive, and then get his chance, and play well. In those last 4 games of the Minnesota series, speaks highly of JK and his approach, and so all in all. He's a guy who's got a lot of talent and a lot of ability, and still growing, still raw in many ways. But a lot of what we have to figure out is roster construction and the combination. Basketball's always a 5-man game, and the combinations were tricky. They just were. So within all that, we've got to do a better job as a staff of figuring out some things, how we're going about our business. JK's got things to improve on. We've got to improve our roster, all in all, and those are all the things that we're thinking about right now.
Steve, as you talk about roster balance and combos, how much in the offseason is adding size a priority? Not just at center, but I know positional height was one of Bob Myers' favorite terms, and I know it still applies now. How important is that, I guess, as you look forward?
Well, it's important if those guys with positional size are good basketball players. So you can't just add size for size sake. And the pieces have to fit together. And we have a really unique puzzle. Draymond and Steph are each of them are incredibly unique players and have learned how to play together at an incredibly high level. And so whatever we do, you add Jimmy to the mix, who is also a unique superstar, very dominant isolation player. But you could see the last few games of that series, we didn't have shooting around him, so he had nowhere to go with the ball. So these are all things we're thinking about. So I have high hopes for Quentin Post. I thought Quentin had a great rookie season. He showed the impact he could make, and I think he'll make a lot of improvement. He gives us positional size, shooting. Those are kind of things that we need. But you could see once Steph went out, the lack of shooting was an issue, and that impacted Draymond. It impacted Jimmy, impacted J.K. So those are things that we have to figure out for sure.
Steve, before the trade deadline, before you guys got Jimmy, you, Steph, and Draymond were on the same page of we don't want to mortgage our future for any desperate moves, and you were able to get Jimmy without having to do that.
Right.
Has Jimmy changed the equation of that feeling entering offseason as far as not trading younger future pieces for maybe another star or a bigger piece?
Yeah, I always think it just depends on what and who you're talking about. And Mike, John Phelps, front office, these guys are really, really good at what they do, and I will leave that in their hands. It's difficult. These are difficult equations. You look around the league and you see some teams that have mortgaged their future and they're in some trouble, and there are other teams that have done so and they're championship contenders. And we didn't think we were that far, but there's a lot of luck involved with injuries. You have to factor in the age of our three best players. You have to if you're Mike and his group. So some kind of balance within that conversation is definitely necessary, and it's not an easy question to answer.
Steve, is the lack of shooting, is that specifically three-point shooting, or is it more players willing to take those shots? And can it come internally with the development of a Brandon, of a Moses?
Yeah, for sure it comes internally. And so we will continue to address that, and our players will continue to work on that. But you see it. The modern game is about can you create shots, and then can you make shots? Can you surround those shot creators, with spacing and add multiple positions, and so that's kind of the name of the game in the modern NBA. And look at Minnesota. I thought we did a pretty decent job at times in the series of defending them, and but they've got guys, both Randall and Edwards, who were able to break us down, and then all of a sudden they're kicking out to 4 or 5 different three-point shooters, including a center and Naz Reid, and that makes defense really, really tricky. And so we have to think about that in terms of what it means for our defense. Do we need to switch more and try to stay in front and not be in so many rotations like we were the other night? And then it also factors into the offense. Can we put more lineups together who, that can kind of feature that both shot creation and shot making and spacing? And it's obviously a lot tougher to do than to say.
And then with Draymond, obviously he became pretty much a full-time center when Jimmy got here. Are you comfortable with that going forward for a full season?
I'm not. I don't want to start next season with Draymond as our starting 5. I think it's doable for the last 30 games like we did this year, but I think you see the toll it takes on him. He's talked about it too, and it's why we started out this past season starting Trace and Draymond. And, we started out the first 3 or 4 games with J.K. at the 3 with those guys. And to me, that was instantly not doable, given everything I just talked about with shot creation and spacing, trying to survive in the modern NBA. So these are all things we have to consider. And like I said, I have great faith in Mike and John and their work this summer, but also in our coaching staff and our players and the work that they're going to put in. And look, we're talking about all this stuff, but a week ago we're up 1-0 in the conference semis. We feel like we got a real shot at winning a championship. I still felt that way, after the fact. So I don't think we're that far away. Put it that way.
Steve, size has been asked about, shooting's been asked about. Where are you just in terms of the guard play that you have in terms of playmaking? Do you feel you guys need another playmaking guard specifically, maybe as opposed to a wing or a big?
I'm just, you guys know me, I'm a huge proponent of passing, of the ability to pass the ball. I think it unlocks everything. You watch some of the teams doing well. You look at Indiana right now. They're passing from, 4 or 5 different spots. They got 3-point guards that are, constantly attacking and breaking down the defense and moving the ball. So I'm always, that's why Brandon, even in his shooting struggles, I got asked several times during the series why I was staying with Brandon, passing and playmaking and running through the catch and creating a rotation, moving the ball. That's the game. Otherwise, you end up with 5 guys standing around just staring at each other. Even if all 5 guys can shoot, if they can't pass, it doesn't matter. You're not breaking the defense down. So I'm a huge believer in playmaking, IQ. We've won multiple championships with that formula. It doesn't matter what position it is. We need guys who see the game, can make plays and can connect the game and create easier opportunities for their teammates. Brandon is one of those guys, which is why he's so important to us going forward.
How much importance do you place on adding athleticism to the roster, especially with how Minnesota, like you said, was able to kind of break you guys down off the dribble with Edwards and Randall? But also, how do you balance that with finding guys, like you said, that can pass the ball, that can just kind of know how to play within the offense?
Yeah, that's those are the hardest guys to find, and then can those guys play defense, and that's why it's so hard to win a championship. And that's why what Bob Myers and Joe and the front office were able to do over the last decade has been so impressive. We've just had a lot of two-way players and two-way rosters, and that's why we've had so much success. But really hard to find those guys, and but that's always the goal.
Steve, do you want to see Quentin Post play Summer League? And what about maybe someone like Taron Armstrong, who had obviously a unique story for you guys?
Taron will be in Summer League. That's the plan. Quentin will be out there as well. And like I said, I'm excited about a lot of our young guys and the internal development. So many players in this league come seemingly out of nowhere. We were just talking about Naz Reid. I mean, I think he was a 2nd-round pick. And there's always guys, Fred Van Vliet wasn't even drafted, what he was able to do in our series, completely flipping the series with his play, guy undrafted. So there's a lot of stories out there of, finding players who may not be on people's radar, whether it's in the draft or free agency. And then it's our job to help develop those guys and help, see if they can take that next step. And I think some of our young guys can do that.
I know that your son is part of this, but was this the best integration from Santa Cruz to Golden State that you've seen? I mean, you see Kevin Knox, obviously Quinn, Pat Spence, all these guys. It seems like they kind of seamlessly fit in with you once they arrive.
Yeah, I think we've done a better job over the last few years of kind of integrating the player development system. Seth Cooper's done an amazing job with that. In terms of what we're teaching there, what we're teaching here, and then the flow of players. But I think that's been a pretty good theme of ours for years. I mean, we've had a lot of success stories going back to Juan Toscano Anderson, Quinn Cook, players like that. But I do think the two organizations are more aligned and connected than ever, and I think it's showing in our player development.
How do you view your own future, and how tied do you think it is to kind of Steph and riding out this era with Steph?
At this point, just year to year. I love my job. It's so much fun. I loved this season. This was a really gratifying year in terms of the players' commitment to each other, their ability to get through individual adversity. I mentioned J.K. I thought Moses was so happy for him the other day. You know, the playoffs kind of went wrong for him a little bit based on the Houston series, and we kind of turned to Buddy, and then Moses comes back and has that great fourth quarter, showing exactly who he is. And I just think up and down the roster, we had guys who were committed, and when you're a coach, that's all you can really ask for. So I loved every second of this year. I love my job, but I know where the team is. I know where the organization is. So I'm perfectly comfortable just going year by year at this point.
Kavan and Gary, obviously free agents, have played key roles here for a significant period of time. Just how do you view their seasons, and just what do you expect with free agency with them, and just kind of the change in general that's coming up that you anticipate?
I love those guys. I mean, Loon epitomizes everything I just talked about in terms of committing to the team and sacrifice and getting through adversity. He is in many ways our moral compass in that regard, and Gary's been phenomenal. I love coaching him, love seeing him every day, and he's been so impactful. So I really want those guys back. I'm hopeful they will be. You just never know how things play out.
Steve, how did you like your coaching staff? You mentioned that some things can be improved internally, but I was wondering with Stott and Stack, what did you think of the season?
We had a great staff this year. The collaboration, the growth within the year, as Stack and Terry got comfortable with our style, and the rest of the coaches got comfortable with them, and the way we all communicated. I thought there was a lot of great stuff within the staff, but I also believe that you're constantly evolving in this business. And the young coaches are the ones with the new ideas and the fresh ideas, and so I lean heavily on our young guys. Guys like Lane Wilson and Jacob Rubin, Anthony Vereen. These guys come in every day. Will Sheehy, they all come in with great ideas, good thoughts, and it's up to us as older coaches to, find that balance between mentoring them and listening to them, because adapt or die. It's the truth, and so we have to rethink everything year after year, and I'm already putting a lot of thought into how I want to approach not just player development, but practice scheduling next year. Not scheduling, but the content of practice. The league is so different now. You have a game every other day. And so it's not like the old days where you could scrimmage because you'd have 4 days between games sometimes. So there's very little on-court 5-on-5 work. So we have to be thinking all the time about ways to improve the player's ability to process the game and recognize what's happening, and seeing things on the floor without any live stuff during the season. So it's tricky, but this is where the young guys really come into play on our staff.
Hi, Steve. This is maybe a little bit off topic, but Valkyries have their home opener tonight, season opener, first WNBA regular season game. Just any thoughts on that?
I'll be here.
You'll be here?
Yeah. I couldn't be more excited. I think watching everything unfold over the last year and a half, since the franchise was formed, been incredible to watch. I think the branding has been amazing. The name, the colors, just kind of the unveiling of the team. I've gotten to know Natalie really well, some of her staff, Ohema, the fact that they're training in our old Oakland facility. It's awesome. And, I know tonight's going to be packed. This is just an incredible story. And we have a lot of people here in this building who deserve a lot of credit for what's about to unfold. So a lot of fun. Thank everybody. Thanks. Enjoyed working with all of you, and we'll see you soon.